Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. I am Kelsey Woodworth, the marketing manager here at Smartling and your host for today. So just want to welcome everyone to our second workshop with Hristina Racheva. And how are you this morning, Hristina?
Hi, I'm great. I'm really excited for our second session today. So really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, nice. Me too. Me too. Okay, we have a lot of people calling in. So if you want to just drop in the chat, let us know where you're calling in from. I am based in New York City. And Hristina, where are you?
I'm in Barcelona. We are kind of the end of the summer here, so it's starting to get a bit chilly and dark in the afternoon here.
Yeah. I don't often associate Barcelona with chilly weather. But anyway, San Diego, yeah, another non-chilly place. Okay, cool. So I am going to dive in and give everyone a quick overview of Smartling and then turn it over to Hristina, so that way we can get right to it. And if you have questions along the way, please do pop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will address them as we go. And lastly, this session is being recorded, so we will be sending that to you later this afternoon, as well as it will be on our website. Okay, so jumping right in, at Smartling, our mission is to help you translate and localize all of your digital content. So for the last nearly 12 years, Smartling has been doing this with customers all over the globe, doing just that. And we have offices in 5 different places as well. So we are here to help you serve those needs. And also our goal is to be your hub. So it is the system of record for all of your content. We have the ability to connect all of your content repositories, whether it's product, content, marketing, help centers, all of that to help you centralize them into the translation cloud. And this is just an overview visual of exactly how we do that. So we help you translate and localize through APIs, proxies, different things of that nature, so that you can use your translation management system to help manage all things related to translation. So workflows, linguistic assets, as well as the CAT tool, and your human translators are able to get right in there and work on everything in one place. And human translation is also something that Smartling offers. So this overall makes the translation process turnkey and efficient. And if you'd like to learn more, you can head to our website, smartling.com. And there's lots more to find there, as well as chat with us if you would like. So, okay, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Kelsey, for the introduction. Right, so here we are today. This is our second workshop from the series of career coaching and career progression. So I know many of you that's registered for today attended our first workshop, and we got lots of feedback. It was really practical insights, lots of examples, specific examples and topics we covered in the first one. So we're going to do even more of that today. So the topic for today is buy-in, and why do we need, as localization leaders, managers, teams, why do we need to get the buy-in from those we work with, usually considered leadership? Oftentimes it's to get support to execute our vision, and that is tools, processes, resources, people, budget, but also to get others to collaborate with us, to adhere to our processes, and just generally to raise awareness and build knowledge about localization. So that's kind of why we talk so much about the buy-in and what the buy-in is all about, really. And I want to start with a story first. This year in the summer, in June, I attended one of the workshops that were part of the Lockward conference. It's a workshop that they do just before the event, the main event, and it's called Bigger, Better, Faster. And as part of that workshop, every year, every edition, there's a different topic. And the topic of this edition was elevating localization influence by building relationships with stakeholders. A very fancy title to say buy-in and how to get buy-in for localization. And I was part of that workshop on the panel. We had in total 4 panelists. And one of the panelists was a globalization manager from HubSpot, Gaia, a really great speaker, a really knowledgeable speaker. And the moderator you know, this lady being part of HubSpot, we know Natalie Kelly is the VP of localization at HubSpot, so she's like a really eminent speaker, writer, and really well respected and well knowledgeable within our industry. So the moderator at the workshop said, well, you know, your job must be really easy because you have a VP of localization. So probably, you know, it's easy. Everyone knows about localization and the collaboration. It's flowing. And of course, the response from the person there from HubSpot, from Gaia, wasn't really, well, actually, no. And even just the fact that in her title, she leads globalization enablement, and she's responsible for actually raising awareness. And I really love this example because we often have that kind of myth and misconception that if there is a localization leader, if there is someone at the executive level that represents localization, or if we get the buy-in of an executive level, almost like it's a magic pad and all our problems will be solved, all our challenges, and everyone will know about localization and we don't have to worry about getting that buy-in. And I don't think that's the case. There's just so much more when it comes to buy-in. It's not just the senior level, and we'll look into that. And then there is another misconception I think we have oftentimes, and like another main topic we talk about when we talk about buy-in. And that is usually, where does the localization team sit within the organization? And we kind of almost think that if it sits at the right place, at the right org, again, that will solve all our problems. And the funny thing is, we actually don't even get to agree where that right place is, but we think that that's the solution. And again, I don't think that's something that will solve our problems. And just out of curiosity and just to get the conversation going, if you would like, can you, especially if you work on the client side, where does your localization team sit within the organization? What part of the organization? Is it product? Is it engineering? Is it experience, brand, marketing? If you can type in the channel. If you want to type as well your company, if you want. So for example, for me, I work at Skyscanner, so our team sits within the brand experience. Yeah, feel free, you can just type your team or part that you're of. If you want to type your company as well, either way is fine. So what do we get? We have engineering, we have product operations. Anyone else? Documentation. Someone says they're moving around right now in product, production, software, product, marketing, development services. Answers are going very fast, but we're seeing lots of different parts, right? Operations, digital communication. So there's just so many places where we can sit, so many places where it could be the right place to sit. So that's kind of my point as well. There's not always one place only to solve our problems. So what are we going to look at today? Again, we will touch a bit on the buy-in side and how to get that buy-in, but like really very quickly, a bit on how to get our localization strategy be perceived and supported by leadership. But again, we'll go quickly through those 2 points because there are 3 key areas we'll touch on that are really much more impactful, and I think have, like, even though they're very subtle compared to just direct buy-in support, they can have actually bigger impact. And that's how to influence without authority, which is pretty much what we do as localization managers. How to change the narrative about localization, how we talk about localization, how others talk about us, and why is that important? And last but not least, let's make localization fun, because it is a lot of fun. And unfortunately, what we often do when we talk with others is about tools and processes, and we forget that there is much more to that, and we can engage them in that way. Great. So kicking in with the buy-in part, and again, it's not just the leadership that we need to get support from. It's not a one-off time where we share our maybe strategy and we need to get their support. It's something that we need to do, in my opinion, all the time and all levels with all disciplines and all individuals. So yes, it is overwhelming, but there's so many different ways that we can do that in our interaction. So the typical one is that vertical buy-in, so getting senior leadership, but there is also that horizontal one. And say if we talk about different teams, how can we engage with the teams that we work on a daily basis, right? Because oftentimes, most of the tech companies these days, especially, the culture is not the traditionally top-down culture. And even if we get the support from an executive level, be that certain maybe CMO, marketing, could be the chief product officer, any level of the executive, even if they support our strategy, they support our vision, but it's most of companies these days are not ones that then the leadership individual will go down and tell people what to do, right? We still need to get the teams that we work on a daily basis to adhere to that process. We still need to get maybe senior management to include localization in their planning. So this is why the getting leadership buy-in won't solve our problems. And there are those like different ways we can engage others in a way. And a key way in doing that, be that with leadership or just in individual, very powerful that we often forget is to get personal in our relationships and to be really strategic and intentional how we build relationships, to approach individuals. We're trying to build informal relationships and then use that informal kind of strong connection later in our collaboration and getting them to support us. And if we are to touch very quickly on the leadership part, just a few do's and don'ts when we try to kind of to present our case and to get their support. So first and foremost, usually when we talk about leadership engagement, it's maybe presenting our strategy and getting support from them. So be super, super crystal clear. What is the purpose of our presentation if we are to speak to them? What do we want to get out of it? And usually minimize that to one thing only, like focus on one thing. And that's what we want to get out of that, not too complicated, right? One thing could be, we want to get budget to get maybe a new tool, or maybe we want to increase the size of the team, but really just focus on one thing. And then what do they care and need to know about? Like start with the why. Why should they care? Introduce like the context. How much do they know? And the more senior people we present to, the less they need to know about the details and the how of what we do, and more about what's the impact of that. And in a way as well, what does localization represent beyond the immediate just words, tools, and processes? Because we tend to focus often too much on the how versus the outcome of what we're trying to get. And again, at the end, just one clear ask for them. Of course, they want to help you, but oftentimes they might not know how. And like be very clear, one thing that they can do for you and what they can do out of that session. And the last thing, be prepared to get pushback. It's normal, this is their role to challenge, to ask questions, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they disagree or don't trust, but rather they usually try to understand, and they try to make sure they get the details of what is relevant for them. So if you get that challenging and that questions, just provide as much information as possible. So that's kind of super high level, the leadership buy-in parts. A bit similar to or related to that is strategy. So we're not going to focus on how to build a localization strategy, but rather how to do it in a way that can be relevant or speak to usually the leadership team. But before we go into that, let's do a quick poll and see the ones we have here on the call. Have you been, in what way have you been involved in creating a localization strategy? Maybe you've led the strategy yourself, maybe you were part or supporting the localization lead in creating the strategy, or maybe you haven't had a chance to do that yet. Let us know. Let's see how many of us here on the call have been involved in that. All right, so here are the answers. We have 50%, great. 50% of us on the call have led the localization strategy, 27 have supported, and only 22 have not been involved. So we have a different level here, which is great, and hopefully they'll be relevant for everyone. So two things when in a way presenting or putting forward our strategy. First one is paint a vision and really dream big when you do that. Two mistakes I see people do, or I've also myself have done in the past. First one is when we talk about, when we plan our vision and strategy, we often limit ourselves to tools, processes, localization setup overall. And even probably you might be familiar with the localization framework from the Common Sense Advisory and how to kind of measure and look at our localization maturity stage within the company level. But even that focuses on processes and tools, right? Repeatable, managed, optimized. And this is not something that really kind of inspires maybe the localization team, but doesn't engage necessarily others outside the team and doesn't really focus on the impact. So when building localization strategy that way, we focus on the how we do the things. And that's not really why we're there. The how is our means, but what we're there to is really the impact of what we do. So we need to focus on that impact, on what is the outcome of our work, what we're trying to achieve through the means of tools and processes. So kind of focusing on that and using that to paint that vision that we go beyond the basics and the tools and processes that we can get then others really to feel engaged and to see really the purpose of what it is that we do. And again, this is particularly important when we share that with the leadership, because why would they care about the tools and processes, right? What is it? Why is that important? And why should we invest? What is the outcome of that? And another kind of mistake that we might make as well sometimes is when we think of the future and we think of the direction of strategy, we focus on the present, what is not working right now, what are our pain points, what are our challenges, and then our strategy is how to fix that. And this is the approach of present forward. So starting from the present and just trying to fix our present versus thinking of the future and painting a bit that like dreaming big, like what is an ideal state? What is an ideal way of localization set up within our particular company, what that would look like, and then walking that backwards and building a strategy to achieve that, hence the future back approach. And by thinking of that ideal state, thinking of that ideal long-term vision about localization and about the impact of localization, we really kind of allow ourselves to break free from the moment, from the limitations that currently we have of things that are not working, from the limitations of the past, to really open up our minds to what is possible in the future. And we see sometimes when we interact with other individuals within the company or localization, right, we're trying to think of solving a problem and people often get stuck in the now, like, oh, this is not possible because we don't have the tool, or this is not possible because we've tried in the past and it's not working. So kind of being stuck in the present and the limitations. So allow yourself as a team, as a lead, to kind of look into the future 5 years from now and what that ideal state would look like, and then walk that back and build a strategy to achieve that. And so these are the two kind of quick stops at leadership buy-in and strategy in a way that can paint a vision for others also to feel engaged. We're moving into the kind of second part that we haven't really touched on much within the localization industry. So influence without authority. So what does it even mean in the first place? The definition is the ability to make others act, behave, and think without having any power or right over them to force them to do that. And as I was looking at that definition, it almost feels like this is the definition of what a localization manager does, right? We don't own any product, we don't own any content, marketing, yet we have to get others that own that to make a decision, to act, to change things. So I often, and I've talked about this in the previous session, and oftentimes I look for inspiration and learning outside the localization industry. So I listened to a talk from product management about actually influencing without authority, and I thought this is so relevant for us in localization. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the product school. It's a school for product managers. They do product management courses, but they also have very prolific schedule with online webinars. On average, I think they do 2 webinars a day, anything within the product management space, with speakers from all over the world, different countries and different companies. So I saw this talk from Matt Tse, who is a senior product manager at Atlassian, and the talk was called How to Influence Without Authority. And I just saw the title and I literally thought this would be so relevant for me as a localization lead. And I also took the screenshot from the webinars that were happening just within the same time slot and the same kind of span of few days. And you can see how relevant they can be for us. Things like leading in times of crisis, lead your team with trust, transparency, and empathy, or how to influence your engineering team, right? All of those will be so relevant for us as localization leads. And I think for us as leaders to be able to have that knowledge and impact beyond our space, it's important to look to build our skill set from other disciplines and to build that business mindset broadly. So what does this person talk about? He shared a framework for influencing that was developed within Atlassian, so very proprietary to them. And they defined 3 roles that product managers, and again, I think localization managers can take on 3 different roles at different times, at different ways of collaborating or with different teams that can use to interact and influence others. So we're going to look through each of the roles and when to use each of these and why is that helpful. So the first one is what they've defined as a psychologist. So the purpose and the way to go about that is to understand the motivation and context of those who you're trying to influence or those you're trying to collaborate with. So understanding what drives them and what's their kind of reasons for what they do or what they need. And when can we apply this approach or this role is maybe when, as an individual, we're new to a company, new to a team, there's a new project, new manager, there's change of stakeholder with some of the stakeholders we work with, or when there is a sort of a conflict situation, maybe there's misalignment between teams, individuals, there's friction in the collaboration. So approaching those situations with the psychologist hat on, like with that curiosity and trying to understand, and could be through one-to-ones where you reach out to an individual and try to understand that. Could be through what they call background reading or stalking, where you go to, there may be open public Slack channels, Confluence pages, try to learn about why they do things that they do. And the good old social informal ways of connecting and building relationships and trying to understand. The second role that we can take on is the pitcher. So this is someone that's constantly exploring new ideas, new opportunities, trying out different ways of collaborating. So it could be if you have ideas of how to do maybe a new approach with a stakeholder and just approaching them with, how about if we try out this? And what about if we try a different approach, or we have a new take on a situation? So kind of in a way to generate excitement about your idea and to getting them to be interested about your idea, hence to collaborate better and do things maybe differently. And a way to do that is with through different like visuals. So maybe boards, posters, workshops, brainstorming, screenshots, or more interactive visual ways of presenting the ideas and all the potential that could collaboration look like. Maybe branding and putting a name to your approach so that others can reference back to it, and just the good old, again, sort of elevator page in a very concise, powerful way, sharing the ideas. And the last role is of the activist. So someone that is there to create large long-term movements by regularly sharing stories, perspective, facts, stories. And that's usually when we're trying to drive a significant change, when we are working company-wide. So it's more at a broad scope versus team level or day-to-day level. So really broader outside of our immediate team or the immediate teams we collaborate with. And ways to do that is well, first of all, is really kind of painting that vision, what the future could look like. What is this mission we're trying to advocate for, to push for, and also working with designers, maybe with other teams, to make that visual and engaging, and to even drive that closer. Repetition, so any opportunity we have to talk about that, but also talk about it in a way that is relevant for others, and not just, this is us and this is what we need, but rather what's in for them. And of course, bringing that point with passion, generating energy and excitement around that, and remembering also that it takes patience, and it takes patience to to achieve something long-term and building that momentum. And as I was listening to this presentation, I just recognized myself in the activist role, going around and talking to teams and sharing stories and getting them to engage with what we do. So I thought these are like really interesting and kind of made me think anything that I do when I engage with others, where would I put, what hat would I put on in that interaction? And by knowing that this is the particular role, you can enhance that even further and make the most of it. So let's see, did any of you recognize any of those roles? Again, we might have not heard them before, but as you kind of now hear a bit more, and I've certainly realized this is what I've been doing all along, or this is the activist role for me was the one that I've identified the most. Did you identify yourself with any of these, or which is the role that you take on the most within your role or within your company? I'm just checking the chat. Someone just said, "Can't believe how accurate these three are." I know, when I saw this, it was just so mind-blowing that we've been doing all those roles all along, and kind of having a name to them, that makes it even more. All right, so we have the activists, yeah, the most 41%, right? That's pretty much most of the work that we do. Of course, the psychologists, so really trying to understand what drives the teams we work with so we can collaborate better, and slightly lower is the pitcher. Yeah, really interesting. So hopefully that gives you, next time when you are going around working with others, kind of, all right, what am I today? What hat am I wearing, and how can I enhance that even more? Great. Moving on into the fourth point of our session today, and that is changing the narrative of how we talk about ourselves. So getting the buy-in is not just about putting our presentation or our strategy forward and getting the support either from leadership or from senior management. It's also really how we change how we position ourselves, how we talk about ourselves, how we also educate our stakeholders about localization. And when we say educate here, it's not so much in terms of what is localization like learning and teaching, but rather how they see us and how they talk about us, what words they use usually, and changing that, and why is that so important. So starting with the language. As language professionals, it is something that we are really good at and sensitive to, and I've realized it's so critical. So first of all, we need to watch better our language and how we talk about our team, ourselves, about the value we bring. So oftentimes we talk about language, translation, and even if there's been shift already in our industry, moving away from talking about translation and focusing, but we still focus on the language part and getting content localized. But one thing that I personally started doing is every time I get an opportunity, I don't even talk about localization whenever possible. Instead, I talk about international user experience. And by saying that user experience, it automatically changes the focus from something that the localization team does to something that other teams also should be doing and should be involved and should be responsible. So anyone that is involved in the user experience in general, right? Building, like product managers building the product, and designers or researchers that are involved and responsible for the experience. So kind of shifting that, talking about international user experience, takes the focus away from the language and puts that into others' scope as well. But also talking about localization and focusing on the impact. So what we do and the localization itself is the act of what we do. And while we need to focus more on the outcome. So localization is the how, but the experience is the what of what we do and the outcome of that. So getting that relevant experience. For example, one thing that I try to mention in every presentation, no matter who I speak to, what discipline, is end up or start with a sentence that our international users deserve the same great experience as our English speaking ones. So again, always bringing that to the experience and to the international user experience. And that's like what we can do when we talk to others and change a bit that perspective and change that narrative. But it's also important to watch the language of others, how others talk about us. And I've noticed, for example, when we collaborate with some teams and they're like really open to work with us and really open to do anything we need. So they would sometimes say things like, oh yeah, we need to do this because localization needs it, or because localization team has asked for it. And at some point I realized, wait, just going back to the previous point of the international user experience, it's like, no, you guys are not doing that for us, for the localization team. We are all doing that for our international users. So we started as a team, we started kind of, whenever I hear that, kind of jumping the conversation and be like, yeah, actually, we're not doing this for us, we're doing it for our users. And this is very important because they are seeing it and they're, being kind and collaborative. They're seeing this from a perspective of they're doing us a favor and they're doing something to support us. But the issue with that can be is, right, they're doing this now because maybe, they're not that challenged. They don't have maybe they have enough capacity to support us. But what if the next time they cannot do that? They cannot do that a favor. So we will be seen more as a blocker because they're doing it for us. But if it's with the perception that they're doing it for the user and for the final user and for their experience, then we're removing that kind of blocker perception. Or I've had another experience working with our user research team where we, as a company, we don't have enough resources to do international user research. So we're just trying to figure out a way, how can we support them with that? What could that look like? And as we collaborated, at the end, they really didn't have the capacity. So they told me, well, we don't have the time to help you guys. And even that, they're not helping me personally, or they're not helping the localization team, actually the other way around. We were trying to help them as a user research team so they can help the product teams get insights and make sure that our products are relevant for our international users. So even at that point, kind of jumping in and being like, well, let's be clear, like, we're trying to help you. So shifting that language and showing that we together are doing it for the users. No one is doing anything for us, for the localization team in particular. So focusing on the language is super critical. And this is, right, those like subtle ways of getting that buy-in, getting that understanding and awareness of why others need to collaborate or to help us towards that common goal. Another way to do that is building empathy and finding allies. So again, how we present our challenges. Oftentimes we talk about poor quality or bad processes and how we need to improve that, but that might not mean much to other teams. So a way to do that, to get and to build the empathy, is think about our international users. And based on what we know, even if we know certain feedback or certain quality for language is not great, how can we position that? Well, this is our user from Germany, and if quality is not great for them, this is what it means actually. So putting the focus on the user, how is this impacting them? Or is that a negative experience for them? So really illustrating that and building empathy for our international users and what are their challenges of using our products if we're not doing something well. And I've done that in the past, trying to look for examples within our product where we're really failing our international users. And it feels a bit also uncomfortable because we're basically saying this is broken in localization and this is something that we're not doing well. But kind of allowing ourselves to have that, like, this is not working well. We need your support, be that as a team, as a leadership level. We need your support to fix that. We know what's not working. We know how to fix it, but we need, be that a tool, be that a budget, be that hire more bigger team to support that. So focusing and building the empathy for the user versus talking about quality or processes. And also, as always, we've talked about it in the previous session, finding allies to really, really drive that point home and support your vision. I actually asked, we regularly do that at the company level, ask for feedback, and I've asked feedback from a senior leader around what can I do better as a lead, what can I do better support others. And he exactly was his point, literally his words: find your allies and give them the ammunition to help you champion your approach and vision. So you don't have to do it on your own. Find those people there to also go around and go out there and talk about the need to support localization. And this is something that we mentioned before as well. It's how to build a network of champions, a network of supporters. And I've heard a lot, talk a lot about this within the accessibility industry and accessibility discipline. They talk a lot about network of champions. So I did an exercise. I typed in Google network champions or localization network champion. There were 2 million results and none of them were relevant. And then I typed accessibility network champion and there were 34 million results. So there are industries that really make the most of those network of champions. And I think we can really learn, again, a way to learn from others and build others that support us, and apart from different disciplines, different parts of the organization, and really promote our cause. And the last part from changing the narrative and the language is really leaning on others. And the first one, something that I like, and I've called actually how to piggyback on other disciplines in a kind of in a joking way, but these days, we know lots of tech companies, we talk a lot about the importance of making products accessible. We talk a lot about diversity and inclusion through our culture, but also through our product. And oftentimes, in a way, probably depends on the companies, but I feel like suddenly those topics have taken over the stage and they're like so prominent. And it feels like with localization, we couldn't get to that point. So I try every time the conversations around accessibility, diversity, I try to piggyback on that and kind of bring the localization within those conversations as well. And again, using the language, because how I position that is, at its core, localization is about enabling users from different countries use our products. And it's the same with accessibility, right? Enabling users with different challenges or disabilities use our product. Or when there's a conversation around diversity and inclusion, localization at its core is about making products and experiences so that users from different countries, from different nationalities can feel represented and included through that by adjusting the language, by adjusting the experience. So kind of joining those conversations, where the conversation around experience, accessibility, diversity, inclusion, and bringing the localization within that to build that extra visibility. And it could be a different discipline within your organization. Maybe it's the UX, the experience, the UX writing team that are really prominent. So how can you kind of piggyback on them and join them and link what you do to what they do? Another point, more than leaning on others, is actually making localization the responsibility of others. So what do I mean? An example, prime example I had is, again, at the company level, we don't necessarily do yet a lot of international products. So we don't necessarily look at our product and adjusting that per market. And this is something that I envision that we can do in the future at scale as well. So to kind of raise awareness with our product team, I did very extensive research how some other tech companies look at international product, at international experience, and brought that in. And I gave a presentation to our product team about that. How we should care at our company about our international users, how we should think about our product being more international. And it was like really a call to action to all product managers. Like, this is what others are doing, we're not. How can we do that? And I got a question from one of the senior product managers. Well, this is great. So how do you suggest, what's your thinking? How can we do that? And I was shocked because, you know, and I was literally, my answer was, I don't know. This is why I'm sharing this with you guys, right? You're the product managers, you are product leaders. So putting back that on them, like, yes, as a localization team, we can raise awareness. We can tell you differences within different markets. We can tell you which market it's important to focus on, where there are bigger differences and challenges. But at the end of the day, you're the ones that own the product. You're the ones that drive our product vision and strategy. So kind of shifting whenever possible the responsibility to those that really can do that. And so we don't need to ourselves bring that burden on our shoulders and carry that on our shoulders. And we can't, right, either. So these are a few of the things: shifting the responsibility, changing the language, piggybacking on other disciplines. So lots of like smaller things that we can implement in our daily interactions, in our daily conversations. And again, that's with different disciplines, different levels, that can slowly change the perception and slowly change how we are seen. So I want to take a pause here for a bit and see, it's like a question. If anyone wants to jump in, to unmute themselves, or then if you want to type into the channel. But have you yourself been able to apply some of these within your experience? Which ones did you find maybe most interesting, or you're willing to try? I'm going to flip through some of those screens as a reminder. But if anyone wants to share their experience, or just type in the channel.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. We had a question come in that says, any suggestions on how to find allies within your organization? And I think maybe that might be a little bit more difficult in these times where we're spread out, maybe not working in the office with people. Maybe we don't have those work friendships or relationships that we may have had before.
Yeah, it's a great question. And, you know, all of these ways, as you see, they're very kind of subtle, very strategic, very intentional. So things that come to mind, particularly was when we're presenting our localization strategy to our leadership team. And we had a change of execs on our leadership team. So several new execs joining. And of course, out of curiosity, looked at LinkedIn, what's their experience, where they come from. And this particular CFO, he had experience, or he was already a speaker in different languages. He worked in a big company, was part of a sort of international team. So kind of in a sneaky way, finding out maybe their personal experience, and then reaching out to them with knowing that they might have interest in that. Or other way could be finding allies. Allies is who else would care about, in a way, what you do. For example, for UX writers, for them, their focus is creating products or creating language that really gets users to understand what they're doing, to help them through the process. So it's in their interest, it's in the writer's interest, that the language and the copy they create can be translated and localized in a way that, you know, does justice to their word. They wouldn't want if someone uses the product in French and to see, you know, what is that like poor language, and reflect back on them as a writer. So then you can connect with them in that way, you know, exactly saying that, and using them as an ally. So thinking of each discipline, what would be for them relevant, and pointing that out, and finding the little connections here and there with them.
Yeah. So we have another question. Someone wrote in, okay, let me start over. Every point made on this amazing presentation hit very close to home for me. I wonder if anyone here has still tried all of these things, but ultimately could not make the change wanted because the company's direction did not include any further investment in localization.
Yeah, interesting. If anyone wants to join in the conversation as well, things that come to mind now is, well, first of all, you know, all of this work is a long-term game, and it takes time, because, you know, companies, hundreds and thousands of people, and usually as localization managers or localization team, even if we're a team, we're just a handful. So it takes time to really convinced that to really bring that point, to raise that enough awareness and get that understanding and support. So first, that don't despair. I know it's hard, and what helps is just talking to other localization individuals, sharing our pain points and getting insights from each other. And then unfortunately there'll always be a point where we cannot get the resources right now, maybe. So really focus on, and I think localization individuals, we're so resourceful and so creative, we can always find a solution despite not having the resources. So kind of think of what it is that you have at your disposal right now, and maybe allies would be the ones that can really help that and join the process. But I also admit it is hard, and it's taken me several years, so it's really a long time. But if anyone wants to share themselves, if they have a secret, another secret way of achieving that.
Okay, I think that might be it for now.
Great. We'll have more questions, time for questions at the end. All right. And that's the last part of our session for today, which is the best, making localization fun again. And you know, again, localization is amazing. You know, we all love it. We all hear because it's like so interesting. We work with different languages, we work with different cultures, nationalities, and there's just so much around how we behave, how we call things, patterns, cultures, traditions. All of those things are fascinating, and yet when we talk to others about localization, and when we need to collaborate with them, when we need to engage with them to get the buy-in, we talk about processes, we talk about tools, we get them to do things, and of course they wouldn't necessarily be eager to do that because it's about, you know, the boring stuff. So how can we use that to get them to engage and to think more about us, right? Because some of those examples I share, it's really not so much about maybe them doing anything specifically right now through those examples, but really having localization on the back of their head, knowing that there is a team there, knowing that localization is complex, knowing that localization is beyond words. And when the time comes for them to work with us or to work on getting a product localized, they will understand and realize and think of us. So how can we do that? My favorite, quizzes. So there is this tool called MyQuiz. There are several other tools out there as well, free to use for creating quizzes. So I started first, we were having like a team or like a tribe event, and I thought we can do like something fun together as a team. So I created this quiz, the first one called Languages of the World, random facts about random languages from around the world. And it was a hit, everyone loved it. Everyone loves a quiz, right? So since then, almost within a year, I've done 7 quizzes, and that was within my immediate team, within our tribe, within other tribes when I was visiting, and with different purposes. For example, there was a quiz, of course, it was the 1st of April. We were having a tribe event. So a tribe is like a org event. And I thought, what if, you know, it's the 1st of April, I was curious at the beginning of the day, how do other countries celebrate that, right? What kind of jokes they do on each other? What's the tradition there? And within like literally 10 minutes before the session, I quickly created a quiz. So for example, apparently in Spain, the 1st of April is actually on the 28th of December, I think. So those kind of random things, again, people loved it. And we've been thinking since then, what if we continue with that kind of fun way? And what we do now, every 2 weeks, that was the first one, was at that point as well. We use Slack as a company communication tool. So we posted in our public, like company-wide channel, you know, happy 1st of April. Did you know that not every country celebrates this? Or did you know this country does this and this country does something else? And it was like a lot of engagement. So that's been since 1st of April. So every 2 weeks now, we post one random fact, either with article or examples about either things that we've done within the localization team of the company that are interesting, or just any random thing. And you can imagine there's just so many different fun facts from around the world. And feedback that we got even after that first quiz was the quizzes, the fun facts. It's really eye-opening, and it helps us all appreciate the importance of the work you do. So that was an impact of a feedback from an engineer, actually. So people really kind of find that engaging. I then did another quiz. So I was working on creating a workshop for our design team a few months ago, and I wanted to go to their town hall just to kind of tell them, you know, there's a workshop coming, it's important to join, just to raise awareness about that. So what I did a quiz. I did a quiz about for the designers, things like how many languages are we available in, what percentage of our revenue comes from non-English speakers, or like this random things, as a way to tell them there is a workshop coming and join us. And then feedback, this is the feedback I got from Director of User Research. And particularly, they said one of their favorite design town hall was the quiz that I ran. Such a clever and effective way to disseminate and land information. So even leadership, senior level, appreciate the fun. So again, just there's so many things that we can do with the interesting fun facts, and these are the most subtle way we can raise that awareness. And again, it's not anything that people would immediately take action, but it just builds that engagement and that curiosity, and they see that localization is well beyond the words, and they learn about different cultures, they learn about the functionality of different languages and why it's so complex. And we've had so much feedback on that from the CTO level, giving a shout out to this, from recruitment and talent. Actually, our social media team now wants to use some of those fun facts to create the social media posts around those. So people love fun things, and they worked a miracle for us. And I think it's a really great way to get others to be curious about localization. So these are the things we covered today. Again, the buy-in does happen at the leadership level if we do want to get our maybe strategy approved, but there's just so many ways we can interact, and so many different levels of the organization we need to interact. How to influence others without having the authority to do so and wearing those different hats. The importance of the words we use and the words others use, and just being very attentive to that and catching those moments where we can, you know, correct them and explain why that is important. And last but not least, just to remember how fun localization is and show it also to others and get them to love it as much as we do. And certainly they will be more eager to collaborate with us in the future. That's us. That's all the slides I've had for today. Hopefully I saw the chats. There were I think lots of comments and questions, so let's I'll look into those.
Yeah, I was going to say we have a couple questions that came in, but before we do that, I just wanted to let everyone know that on this call today, we are going to be offering a special treat. So SmartLink is offering complimentary coaching sessions one-on-one with Hristina to the first 5 people who book a call with us after the event. So if you're new, this would just be an intro call. If you're a customer, they'll just be taking a call with your CSM to learn about some updates that we've recently made. So if you're interested in that, you can just message me your email address or drop it in the chat, and I will follow up with you directly. And so I also wanted to share a resource hub that we've created with all things localization from Hristina. So we have the previous webinar on there as well if you missed that, and her episode on our podcast. So I will post that in the chat. And in now, I guess going over to questions, we had a question come through. Any specific techniques you were using for negotiation, convincing, leading without authority, and leading the dialogue? So any specific techniques you were using for negotiation?
Good question. Let me have a think if there was anything intentional, because sometimes you do something and then just like the 3 profiles, you do those things without thinking, and when you see them, you recognize that's what you've been doing all along. Specific techniques for negotiation. I guess always really go back to the experience part and kind of paint the bigger picture of why why it is that we push for what we push for. Say if we are working with someone or a team, we need them to collaborate, we need them to adhere to our processes, to our way of working. It's kind of really painting the bigger picture and why we as a team or as like those two parties collaborating, and what's the kind of really the outcome of that, and maybe acknowledging as well, actually acknowledging as well that yes, it is hard and yes, it takes time. So some of those collaborations could be challenging for both parties, but at the end of the day, again, it's the outcome, and it's kind of working towards that together. So really focusing on the user and on the experience.
Yeah. And this question is a little bit different, a little bit of a pivot, but any advice on how to convince the team that localization should sit in product rather than engineering? How can I tell them it will move the needle?
Well, I guess you must already know that, right? If you think yourself that you should sit in product, then you know why that is. So just maybe start with those points. And what would the change be like? How would that impact you? Or how would that either make your life easier? I assume also make their life easier, or maybe the user's life easier. So I'd imagine, again, you know that yourself if you really want to believe that's the case. But again, the benefit in everything that we do, because we are service as well. At the end of the day, we provide service as a team, but we also provide experience for international users. So focus as well on the collaboration. Is that going to impact the product teams, make their life easier, and in what way? So focusing on enabling them, and as much as that will enable you.
Cool. We have a few minutes left if anyone else wants to submit a final question. Otherwise, I think we are all set to wrap up. And Christina will be back on December 7th to join us for another webinar as well about building a localization team. So getting buy-in kind of even further back from the ground up. So hope to see all of you there. Thank you so much for coming. If you'd like to follow Christina on LinkedIn, I just dropped the link to her profile in the chat. So you can keep up with all of her localization news there, and have a great rest of your day, and see you guys soon.
Great. Thanks so much, everyone. It was really nice. Thanks for all your questions.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.